Welcome to This Week in Leadership Research, episode number 12. This week, let's talk about collective intelligence. I'll try to answer a question: why does collective intelligence falter in some cases but succeed in other contexts? This is the question posted in an article titled "The Wisdom of Crowds versus the Madness of Mobs: An Evolutionary Model of Bias, Polarization, and Other Challenges to Collective Intelligence." The article was published in Collective Intelligence in 2022. The link of the article is in the description of this video. What is collective intelligence? It is defined as shared and group knowledge and wisdom that emerges from the collaboration and competition of many individuals. It is also known as wisdom of crowds. But a group of people don't yield collective intelligence under all conditions. In fact, collective intelligence is not easy to achieve. It often fails repeatedly. A group of people sometimes yield the madness of crowds or madness of mobs, in which a group of people come together to harass, bully, and attack others. In an organizational context, you may observe that a group of coworkers are aggressive towards another employee. For example, Betsy was hoping to be promoted to manager, but instead her company hired externally to fill the position. Betsy is jealous of her new manager, Adam, so she convinces the rest of her team to undermine Adam to try to drive him out of the company. In this case, a group of people don't generate collective evidence, but the madness of crowds. When it comes to decisions made in organizations, collective intelligence is missing in many cases. In the Ohio State University case, Richard Strauss, who was an employee of the Ohio State University, was able to regularly abuse male students, committing at least 1,429 sexual assaults and 47 rapes over 2 decades. However, Strauss' employment records released by the university referenced no reprimands or disciplinary action over any such concerns. What went wrong in the collective intelligence of multiple layers of the university administration? In the recent case, Meriwether v. Hartop, department chair, acting dean of a college, Title IX office staff, provost, and university president collectively made the university vulnerable legally by violating a professor's First Amendment right. After the Sixth Circuit ruled in favor of the professor, the university reached a settlement with the professor and paid $400,000 to the professor. Again, what went wrong with the collective intelligence of department chair, dean of students, Title IX office staff, acting dean of the college, provost, and the university president? In the article I introduced this week, researchers raise a question: why collective intelligence faltered in some cases but succeeded in other cases? To answer this question, the researchers developed a mathematical model of the evolution of behavior to understand failure of collective intelligence in the case of polarization and discrimination. They specifically asked questions: in what environments will polarization and discrimination likely emerge? What are the key drivers behind the failures of collective intelligence? And more importantly, how to promote collective intelligence by avoid collective ignorance, which refers to either lack of knowledge or simply bad judgment. Humans have an innate desire for social bonding and to be part of a social group. When human behavior has consequences for fitness in a group, evolutionary principles apply. People may adopt views and behave in a way that is consistent with the majority of the group. The benefit of doing so is that people have a better chance of surviving in a group. As a result, collective intelligence will emerge. More importantly, collective intelligence does not always agree with individual rationality and intelligence. In the article I introduced this week, the researchers developed an evolutionary framework based on a binary choice model subject to evolutionary dynamics and stochastic environment that affects the fitness of a differentiated population. The model has 8 parameters. First, binary choice, which means 2 actions of A and B for each individual to choose from. Second, random numbers of offspring that correspond to choice A and B. Third, 2 environmental factors that determine fitness, independently and identically distributed over time and identical for all individuals in a given generation. Fourth, individual characteristics that determine the loading of its fitness on factors. Fifth, individual behavior, defined as the probability to choose action A. Sixth, an individual's type, which is the unit selection in evolution because it completely characterizes an individual. 7. Log geometric average population growth rate for individuals of type F. 8. The growth optimal type that yields the fastest population growth rate. Together, these parameters yield collective intelligence in the form of sophisticated rational behaviors that emerge out of an initial population in which all possible behaviors are equally represented. Within the same model, the researchers also specified conditions under which this collective intelligence breaks down, especially under 2 conditions. The first condition is that decision makers face correlated fitness. It means one individual's decision influences others' decisions. The second condition is path-dependent feedback. Here, path dependence refers to a process in which past decisions influence later decisions. The root cause of collective intelligence going awry is complexity. It is not the complexity of the decision-making task because the model is a simple binary choice. Instead, it's the complex environment in which each decision maker has different initial preference and sends feedback to other decision makers, thereby influencing collective decision outcomes. To prevent failures of collective intelligence, leaders need to pay attention to these 2 conditions under which the collective intelligence breaks down. How to create an environment where collective intelligence, that is, the desired behavior, will emerge naturally instead of simply regulating against the undesired outcome, which could create selective pressures that make matters worse. Use carrots, not just sticks. Here is an example of regulating against the undesired outcome. You want a group to make a collective decision that agrees with your personal preference. To do so, you purposely exclude, marginalize, and even retaliate people who disagree with you. You also reward people who agree with you by giving them decision-making power in a group. In such a group, every group member provides a feedback loop, and the group decision does not only agree with your personal preference, but becomes more polarized and extreme than your original preference. This phenomenon is called group polarization. It describes a phenomenon that when like-minded people deliberate to make a collective decision, they tend to adopt a more extreme position after the deliberation than the position prior to the deliberation. At least 3 conditions need to be met to prevent group polarization. First, there is an equality of status and power among members of a group. This means that no individual can legitimately pretend to impose their opinions on others. Thus, shared decision-making in your team meet this condition. Your supervisor may not be on a committee making a decision, but he has made his preference unequivocally clear. In this case, the condition of equal status and power among members of a group is not met. The second condition for group polarization prevention is the object of judgment has little significance for, or it's unknown to the majority of the group members. Let's assume you are free from social pressure. When you don't have information or expertise on an issue, and when the issue is of little importance to you, you are likely to take an average position. In most committees, committee members are required to include stakeholders who will carry out a plan. In this case, committee members have information and expertise, and the issue under discussion are important to them because they are the ones who implement committee decisions. Also, when committee members serve voluntarily, you may want to consider what motivation propels an individual to do so. If someone serves on the committee voluntarily, then they must consider the issues important. If so, the second condition for group polarization prevention is not met. The third condition for group polarization prevention is that the individuals do not feel involved in the issue or committed, at best slightly committed to any position concerning it. In committees, many group members are deeply committed to the issue under discussion. It is common to see advocates who are deeply involved in the issues and are committed to one position. In this case, the third condition for group polarization prevention is not met. To generate collective intelligence, the challenges for leaders are, first, who should be entrusted with decision-making power? Second, how to integrate divergent views in the collective decision-making process. And third, if the outcome of information integration yields sharp differences in personal benefits across the group members, then how to ensure fairness. The article introduced today didn't provide answers to those questions, but it drew our attention to the conditions of the collapse of collective intelligence. The two conditions are quite prevalent in today's society, particularly with social media. When one individual's decision influences others' decision, and when past decisions influence later decisions, we need to be cautious about the quality of collective decision-making. There is a possibility that collective intelligence is undermined. If you are a researcher, I hope the article I introduced today can offer some inspirations for your research. If you are a leader or aspire to be a leader, I hope this article can guide you in your leadership practices. Stay open-minded, get inspired, and never stop improving your leadership skills. I'll see you next week in This Week in Leadership Research.